Good morning. It's still morning. Yes, good morning. My name is Kimberly Meck, and I am the Executive Director of Disability Empowerment Center. I'm also the co-creator of KCDC, King County Disability Consortium, that is helping to host these Understanding Ableism events. I'm going to read some accessibility information for you, and then I'm going to let Sarah take it away. So, captions are available in Zoom. You can click Show Subtitle in your Zoom menu bar to turn them on. Captions are also running in captionviewer.net. That URL is way too long to read, but we will paste it into the chat. Let's see. ASL interpreters are available today, and we are presenting in gallery view. So the interpreters should always be visible. You do not need to pin them. Please know that we have 2 interpreters. So if you pin the current interpreter, it could prevent you from seeing the active interpreter after an interpreter change. You do not need to be on Zoom to access this event, and we will read all questions out loud and voice any images on the screen so that content will be available to individuals calling in on the phone or who cannot see visual content. This event is being recorded. We will answer questions periodically throughout the discussion. Please use the Q&A tab for any questions you have for panelists. And please use the chat tab for general conversations or comments. We will use both person with a disability and disabled person interchangeably, recognizing different people's preferences for person first or identity first language. All right, Sarah, it's all yours.
Thank you so much for everyone for being here. Welcome to our Understanding Ableism webinar series hosted by the King County Disability Consortium and the Disability Empowerment Center. My name is Sarah Marshall. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an AmeriCorps member serving at the Disability Empowerment Center. Oh, sorry, I realized I just didn't turn my video on. Here we go. Okay, I am a young white woman with short brown hair wearing headphones and a v-neck green sweater. So I want to preface this by giving a definition of ableism. So disability researcher Ian Langtry defines ableism as a complex system of beliefs, practices, and institutional structures that position disability as inherently negative while simultaneously privileging non-disabled bodies and minds as the standard against which all others are measured. And with this definition in mind, the Understanding Ableism series was created to explore how ableism shows up in our policies, communities, and everyday interactions. And so each one of our sessions brings together community members and advocates to share lived experiences and practical knowledge with the hope of helping us all move towards a more inclusive and accessible King County. So for the 10th session of the 2025 season of Understanding Ableism, we will be focusing on assistive technology, exploring how the tools and innovations that shape access can be used to further independence and participation for people with disabilities. Assistive technology can take many forms. It can be mobility aids like wheelchairs and walkers, hearing aids and speech-to-text software, screen readers, adaptive keyboards, smart home devices, durable medical equipment like insulin pumps, and even simple low-tech tools like grabbers or large print labels. What connects all of these innovations is that they are designed to support people in doing things that barriers, not disabilities themselves, make difficult or impossible. In our discussion today, our panelists will share their own experiences with assistive technology and how it can be used to access education, employment, communication, and daily life on someone's personal terms, while also acknowledging that access is not universal and many people face challenges associated with high costs, limited insurance coverage, outdated equipment, or long wait times to receive items that can be essential to their independence. So with that, I'm going to quickly upload a PDF of the questions that will be asked during our panel today. And I will ask each panelist to briefly introduce themselves with their names and pronouns, a short visual description, and what their connection is to this topic. And we'll go in order of who is listed on the PowerPoint. First being Jae Kim, second Dorene Cornwell, then Katie Lechner, Evelyn Burnett, and finally Shelby Shelman. So let me just upload that really quick. So hopefully everyone can see that. And we will start with Jae.
Hello everyone, my name is Jae, the Information and Referral Program Manager at the ARC of King County. I have cerebral palsy and I use a communication device to talk. I am glad to be here today and hope we will provide you helpful information so that you can apply it to your work or life. Assistive technology has had a major impact on my ability to succeed at work and in life.
And then I'll quickly give a visual description for Jae. So Jae is a woman with black hair, with a pink background that sort of features some pretty pink furniture, and is middle-aged.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dorene Cornwell. She and her pronouns usually work best. Let's see, what else? I listed myself from Washington Council of the Blind. That's one affiliation, and I'm speaking for myself, not for the whole council. I am a 60-ish, I can't believe it, white woman with glasses and gray hair, which is pulled back in a French braid that no one's going to see. I would say assistive technology is, I would say that lots of people use assistive technology, whether or not they identify as disabled, and that it really helps bring people together, both in terms of things like Zoom and in terms of the tools people need to be able to communicate. And so thank you very much. And my avatar is me in a red hat. So if you don't see me, my face, it's the red hat is.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Lechner. My pronouns are she, her. I am a middle-aged white woman with blonde hair, wearing a navy turtleneck, and I have a navy background with the logo of actually the company that I'm representing today. I am the Washington representative for Beta Bionics, and we make a fully adaptive automated insulin delivery device. And so I'm really excited to talk about diabetes specifically and how adaptive technology and assistive technology makes an impact on those living with diabetes. Thank you for having me.
Hi there, my name is Evelyn Burnett. My pronouns are she, her. I am a young woman with long brown hair and blue eyes, and I have a very majestic purple mountain background with like lavender fields and a sunset and stuff like that. A lot of pink and purple going on there. I work as the assistive tech specialist at DBR, the Vocational Rehab Division, which I work for Region 2, which goes from Bellingham through King County. And what I do is very, very broad. It's mainly related to employment and helping people with disabilities achieve employment, but I help people with all different kinds of disabilities figure out any kind of tools or accommodations that might be able to help them do that. And Shelby, I think, is going to introduce herself next. She also works for DBR, and she's also an assistive tech specialist, just like me, except that she works for Region 3, which is, well, I'll let her describe that, but includes Tacoma.
You're not far off. So I work in basically the entire peninsula, and then anything south of Tacoma, including Tacoma, is all me. And so I use she, her pronouns. My name is Shelby, like Evelyn said. And I do have long brown hair, but you would not know today because I put it up. And I wear glasses. But I have the same job as Evelyn, just in a different region. My background is from a variety of medical experiences. I worked in medicine for over 10 years, and I also was a medical provider for 2 years within orthotics and prosthetics. So yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for giving your introductions. And so we'll start with our first question, which is, to begin, could each of you share a bit about your relationship with assistive technology, whether as a user, designer, educator, advocate, or anything else?
My main mode of communication is a device called an accent. This communication device reads aloud the words that I type or select, allowing me to express my thoughts, needs, and ideas clearly. It uses a system called 144 Unity, which means that each page has 144 icons for me to choose from. This layout allows me to access a wide variety of words and phrases efficiently. I use a joystick to manually type each letter on the device's keyboard or select from pre-made words and phrases. Many people assume that an AAC device is only for typing and speaking, but my accent does much more than that. It connects to the internet, which allows me to check my email, use messaging apps, and access online resources. These features make it possible for me to participate fully in both my professional and personal life. At work, my accent allows me to communicate with coworkers, contribute during meetings, and complete tasks that require communication or writing. It helps me express my thoughts clearly and ensures that my ideas are heard and valued. Being able to communicate independently at work has increased my confidence and made me feel more included as part of the team. In my daily life, my accent helps me stay connected with friends and family, which is especially meaningful since I am unable to use devices like a phone. I can message people, check social media, and even handle practical tasks like managing appointments or sending emails. My AAC device gives me a sense of freedom and independence that I might not otherwise have. Overall, assistive technology has truly changed my life. It has given me a voice, opened doors to new opportunities, and allowed me to communicate, connect, and succeed in ways that would not have been possible without it.
I never know. So this is Dorene. Excuse me. I never know where to start, so we're going to start with I've worn glasses since I was 2. I got the cataracts, at birth instead of later, like some people. And I would say actually my first official piece of assistive technology besides my glasses was my grandfather's Flair pen, because my condition is hereditary and grandpa always wrote in Flair pen rather than in regular pen. Um, I would say over time, um, I went all the way through college and graduate school reading regular print with glasses out of one eye. And then now, because of other parts of DNA Lotto and life, I rely very much on a screen reader and screen enlargement. And but that's both on a PC and in my phone, with the caveat that technology keeps advancing, and so the number of features that are available increases a lot. And so even if I have software that I like and am most familiar with, sometimes when that software is not available, I have the option of being able to do Plan B and use some features that are built into my computer now. Um, I think there's how to describe how much it is to describe the impact of assistive technology is also to describe living with the things I can't do. And I think partly because I've kind of lived half in the blind world, half in the sighted world. I don't know. I don't know if I'm more conscious of the things I can't do because there's a big loss. Um, but even things like I've in my past, I worked as a computer programmer, data analyst in healthcare for a long time. Um, and so and now I do a lot of transportation advocacy. So I'm acutely conscious of how much visual information there is, whether you're talking about like flow charts and technical design pieces, or um, transportation maps. And so you learn how to extract I've learned a lot how to extract the information I need from the conversation and what kind of questions to ask. And I guess I'm going to go out on a limb even further and say sometimes the best assistive technology is called Ask a Human. I think that's probably plenty to start with, and I'd love to hear from the next.
Thanks, Doreen. So I'm largely going to speak really about diabetes devices, specifically insulin pumps today in my question. And so I've been in diabetes devices in the space for over 11 years, and it's really amazing to see how these systems have evolved with the technology. Really, even in the last 3 to 4 years, it's rapidly increasing. And the iLet, which is the product that Beta Bionics manufactures, is really the next evolution of automated insulin delivery. So I think to start, I'll share a little bit of details about how the company came to be. Our founder, Ed Damiano, is a professor of biomedical engineering at Boston University. His wife is a pediatrician, and their son David was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 11 months old. Being the very smart man that he is, he set out on a mission to develop something that made living with diabetes easier on the person. He spent 20 years developing the iLet technology to kind of mimic what a pancreas would do. And so the iLet is the first of its kind in that it makes 100% of the dosing decisions, and the user just has to tell it when they're eating. So really the ultimate goal with this adaptive technology in the insulin pump world is to make it easier on the person using the device and have the device itself take on more of the workload. So we've been now available in Washington for 2.5 years, and I look forward to continuing to share with you all how that has impacted the community of people living with diabetes. Thank you.
Hi, this is Evelyn Burnett again. My relationship with assistive technology is that I am a user and also a educator, advocate, and trainer. I am deaf and I use cochlear implants, which are a tool, but not really a solution by themselves. They still have a difficult time understanding speech, especially if it's not in person, one-on-one, with no background noise. So I use things like live captions on my phone, captions during video calls. I use captioned phone calls. And I also use visual alerting devices and things like vibration on my smartwatch. In terms of education, advocacy, and training, that's just what I do through my job every day. I educate people on the different types of assistive technology. I'll advocate for them and, maybe work with them and their supervisor and their boss and stuff like that to, make sure they're actually going to be able to implement these devices and, kind of just emphasize that they can definitely be employed and do these things and that they should be able to use these tools. They should be allowed to use these tools at work. Yeah, and then also just training people on how to use these devices and get confident with them. That just leaves me. So, I, like I said, I'm Shelby. And to talk about my relationship with assistive technology would really start with like I said, I worked in orthotics and prosthetics for 2 years. So I built any type of replacement limb or brace you can think of. I actually worked in the field for about 6 years, but I was a provider for 2 of those. I have a master's degree in that, and then I came over to to working for the Division of Vocational Rehab about 6 months ago and have become an educator and advocate for assistive technology, where I'm trying to come up with any type of solution that could help somebody overcome a barrier in order to work.
Thank you so much to everyone for sharing about your relationships. So I think our next question definitely was partially answered by some of our lovely panelists already, but how has assistive technology impacted your ability to succeed in school, work, or life? Thank you, Jay. Then maybe we will have our next panelist, Doreen, if you want to speak maybe a little more on this. And if not, we can just continue to
No,
the
I think
panelists if you like sharing.
no, I'd be glad to speak. So some people you need different tools to do your job. Sometimes you need a paper and pencil. Sometimes you need carpentry tools or mechanics tools. And part of what I need all the time to use a computer is, or to read, I need audio content. Um, but how has assistive technology impacted my ability to succeed? I do a lot of community outreach and I work with a lot of people who use different tools. And part of my background is in tech support, which I've done through college and grad school. And so now I kind of do it in my sleep, and it doesn't really matter whether I know the device or not. I just know the kind of questions to ask. Um, and that's kind of accumulated life background. Let's see. How's that? I feel like assistive technology, there's an aspect of technology that's what does all of society do to, for example, to get around. And when I first became legally blind, I was spending all of my time thinking about transportation anyway, and the environment, and the Seattle area where everything is really congested. And as a part of that, I started realizing, okay, my reality is not reflected in the data that people are using to make a lot of decisions. And so there's a necessity to just keep speaking up and keep speaking up, and then realize that there are in fact people who really are concerned and want to expand what services, and also want to base their services on actual reality, not just on, whatever the system they've been handed with. So I guess that's another way of saying, for me, assistive technology is kind of a permanent dialogue, um, to ensure that the kinds of resources I need and the kinds of things I care about are reflected in bigger decisions, and in figuring out that actually other people are interested in a lot of the same things I am, and there's a whole process of mixing and bringing everybody's insights into a picture.
So speaking, directly to those living with diabetes and the challenges that still exist to some extent, but especially with use of the eyelet can help alleviate, is, the average person living with type 1 diabetes makes 150 decisions a day related to insulin or blood sugar management. So with the eyelet, because it makes all of those decisions, or most of those decisions for them, it alleviates the burden of the constant management that is often required for those managing type 1 diabetes. So what I hear from my patients and colleagues who use the system is the freedom that it gives them back to focus on things like school, work, and life. We are approved down to age 6, so we do work with a lot of families. And what I often hear after they start on the eyelet technology is the space that it creates within the family dynamic, because every discussion isn't focused in and zeroed in on, did you count your carbs? Did you dose your insulin? What's your blood sugar? All of the kind of things that other systems in the past have required to check in with. The eyelet allows the families and the people living with diabetes some space so that they can focus on other areas of their life, right? School and work and relationships. And really that's the goal with technology in the diabetes space, is to take on more of the work and not make life harder. So that's kind of an amazing piece that we hear with the eyelet. I've had actually a number of people who use the eyelet say out loud and share the feedback that they often feel like they forgot they have diabetes when using the system. So it's a very rewarding team and advocacy to be a part of.
Hi there, this is Evelyn Burnett again. So personally, how has assistive technology impacted my ability to succeed in schoolwork or life? So I am late deafened. I lost my hearing when I was 11 years old from bacterial meningitis, like all of it. I just lost all my hearing, and I was actually born and raised in Alaska. So living in a really small town, I pretty much had no assistive technology at all other than my cochlear implants. And it was awful. I was just excluded from so many things. I don't even know how I managed to get through school. I kind of just managed to get the grades and would do everything by the book, even though I couldn't really hear my teachers and I had like no social life. It was terrible. So yeah, it was awful for my mental health and it was just really, really difficult to do anything. But when I finally moved to Washington and came to Seattle, that's when I finally started actually gaining access to some assistive technology. I went to DBR, used to be a participant through vocational rehab and vision. They were giving me some counseling and helping me get through school. And then I was working with the disability offices at UW. So I started getting things like the real-time captioning cart in my classes and captions in my lectures. A copy of the slides, and the phone captioning apps started getting better. And associations like the Hearing Loss Association of America, they've also really pushed for more like open caption showings at movie theaters and stuff like that. Um, I will say that while it has been amazing, it also has so much more progress to make. It's still a very highly flawed system. So, just for example, there's still not enough open caption show times if I want to go to a movie theater, if I want to go to, a performance at a theater, I have to sit there and make accommodations several weeks in advance. And there's no guarantee those captions are actually going to work when I show up at the event. So I guess I would say that the best thing ideally is universal design. So, at that point, they don't even really call it assistive technology. They just call it universal design. It's something that everybody has access to all the time, and it just benefits everybody. So having open captions at all movie theater showings would be amazing, or just all theater performances. Or maybe like you go to a restaurant, instead of them calling out a number, they give you the buzzer that flashes and buzzes when it's time to get your food, that kind of thing. So I would say that it has definitely made it easier for me to do school and work, but it's not perfect. It's still definitely a struggle. And my cochlear implants too, it's still difficult to hear people. I call them a tool, but not exactly a solution. So what I'm really looking forward to is universal design.
Can't speak from experience how it has impacted my ability, but what I can say is for a lot of my participants, I have seen them utilize assistive technology in order to be able to even get a job. I have one participant that it's probably one of my favorite success stories, I like to call it, where she was very upset and wanted employment, but was having a difficult time. She had no concept of time, and she needed help understanding when to get things accomplished and be able to get into work, when to leave. And with getting Google Calendar set up and a smartwatch, it helped her to be able to not only work efficiently at a job, but then hold that job and be a really great employee. And that was one of her big goals for herself, was she wanted to gain that independence. And that's just one example of how I've seen it impact people's ability to really be able to participate in their life in a way that they feel is fulfilling.
Thank you so much for your responses. So our next question is, what are some of the barriers people face when trying to afford or access assistive technologies? And have you faced any of these barriers yourself?
One of the biggest barriers people face when trying to afford or access assistive technology is funding. Many devices, especially communication devices, are very expensive, and insurance or other funding sources do not always cover the full cost. The approval process can take a long time, which can delay someone's ability to communicate or participate fully in work, school, or daily life. Another major barrier is finding the right AAC system. Most communication devices today are iPad-based apps, but those do not work for everyone. In my case, I needed a device that could be customized and operated with a joystick instead of a touchscreen. It took time and effort to find an AAC system that fit my physical needs and communication style. For me, the accent device was the right choice because it allows me to type or select icons using a joystick and gives me full access to communication and the internet. Finding the right technology can be just as challenging as affording it. Every person's needs are different, and it can be frustrating when most available options are designed for one type of user. It is important for companies and funding programs to recognize that one size does not fit all when it comes to AAC devices. Having access to the right technology makes an enormous difference because it can determine whether someone is able to communicate independently, succeed at work, and fully participate in life. Despite these challenges, I am thankful that I was able to find an AAC device that truly works for me and supports my independence at work and in daily life.
I totally want to echo what Jay said about the amount of trial and error involved in matching your technology with your needs. There's another aspect besides the trial and error, which is the training and the incremental training, because nobody soaks it all up instantly like a sponge. You learn one little piece and then you build on that, and then you build on that. And the systems for ensuring training, um, like getting your training funded is a really big deal. And there's kind of two pieces to that. One is um, these are really specific skills and it's valuable to pay for them. Um, it's also really valuable to have circumstances where people can learn from each other, to learn, a community of people who use the same device or who have the same communications issues and then use different devices so that you can understand the pieces where there's something in common or something that's specific to one operating system or one technology choice. Um, and I agree, the funding is critical. Um, I would say it's not just funding. Um, Technology evolves really fast, and not everything one wants to use evolves at the same speed. Um, the Braille printer at the computer lab where I do work is at this point probably 8 years old, but it's still functioning, and we definitely don't have the money to buy a newer, fancier one. And I kind of go around saying there's no internet equivalent of the 20-year-old Honda, where sometimes the software is particularly for people who've used the same tool their whole life, and now, they've been using version 3 and we're up to like version 11 or version 2025 or whatever. And so there's that learning curve to come up to speed and to fully use the features people have. Let's see. And then there's also recognizing that people can contribute to a shared work process even if they don't know all the different pieces. I have a couple of people I work with who, for different reasons, have trouble having a sequence of direction. And if it's a little, I'm always a little nervous when I'm the one who has the best sense of physical location and we're trying to go somewhere and I need to tell someone, well, you got to get on this bus going that direction, or here's the sequence of things we need to do to turn here and turn there. But so that's kind of I don't want to say those are barriers exactly. That's just different people's realities. Like I say, I think technological evolution is really valuable and also sometimes a barrier. And then again, the need for trial and error and the need for ongoing training. And like a lot of tools now, there's training out on the internet, but if you can't get on the internet or you can't remember some key sequence that you really need to use the training, that to me is also kind of frustrating. But I'd like to hear what other people.
I completely agree with the points both Jay and sorry, your name popped off my screen. I had it made about sort of what some of those barriers are. The insulin pump world, up until the eyelet, just the use of the device itself had been complex. And even while we've made the user interaction easier with the eyelet, it still comes with, the complexities of all the pieces and the training and sort of the trial and error part of it. And not everybody, I think, learns. We only take in about 10% of what we hear in that initial training, and so it is a continued process. And luckily at Beta Bionics, we have several amazing educators that work for us in the state of Washington that do that training with the users and the continued follow-up to get them to a point where they do feel comfortable with all of those pieces. And everyone is different as well. And everyone is different in terms of what device works best for them. So the eyelet is one unique solution, but the other devices that are out on the market all have their own unique benefits. I think in the durable medical equipment world, we do face, some of the challenges with insurance coverage, because, there are requirements that you have to kind of have in order to get approved for these devices. So that can sometimes be a barrier up front. And then there are frustrations with ongoing supplies as well. Insurance companies only allow certain quantities of supplies every month or 90 days. And so that really can be a frustrating aspect of device management. We try our best here at the local level to fill in gap supplies when insurance is being tricky, and just supporting our patients and making sure that everything that insurance requires is there up front so we don't run into these issues down the road. And then, of course, there can sometimes be a cost barrier as well. We do find we have really good coverage with certain insurance payers, but depending on the person's medical benefit, there can be out-of-pocket costs and ongoing costs that we look at upfront before the person makes any decision about moving forward. But that can certainly be a barrier to starting on the device. And I think as a whole, the durable medical equipment world is trying to find ways for patient assistance and ways that we can help get these incredible devices into the hands of those that need them. Thank you.
This is Evelyn speaking again. So, in terms of barriers that people face when they're trying to afford or access assistive technology, that is really difficult to summarize quickly. But I guess I would say I would just talk about how technology really needs to be matched to not just to a task, but to an entire life. So it starts at the person and it works outward. And a device isn't going to work well unless it fits who the person is, how their brain works, where and how they live and work, and how the device fits into that reality. So, just to give a few examples, I have participants who need to get an electric wheelchair, and they can't really use that electric wheelchair unless they're going to have transportation that can accommodate it and get them from point A to point B. Maybe they live somewhere that's like really rural, so then they need to get a modified van with a wheelchair ramp because they don't have access to, paratransit or access or the bus. Or, maybe they get a job and they need to get a door switch just so they can access getting into the building. Um, yeah, just a lot of various factors like that, and a lot of people just need follow-ups and training and stuff like that. And I think it's also just really especially hard for people who are kind of like in between and like middle income. Because for people who are low income, I feel like a lot of times there can be resources like, I don't know, using Medicaid or coming to the vocational rehab division or, using nonprofit resources and stuff like that. But if you're like mid-income, a lot of times you really can't utilize those resources, but then you also can't afford to get the assistive technology yourself. So that can be really big. I mean, for me personally, like I really, really need to upgrade my cochlear implants, but I am just gonna wait until these ones break because I can't afford it. I can't afford it. It's gonna cost me thousands of dollars just to upgrade. So yeah, I'm kind of just stuck waiting for these to break and I'm just gonna deal with it later. Trying to think of what else. I think also just systematic society and organizational barriers. That's a really big one. So like with the vocational rehab division, for example, you need to apply for services, you need to be able to determine eligible, and then you need to get assigned to a counselor, you need to get a good counselor, and then finally get a referral to me, the assistive tech specialist. Some people can't even follow through with that process. Maybe they have severe ADHD or they have too much going on in their life, or they're just not eligible, even though they like need assistive technology. Um, and then there's also just other things like budget limitations, like DVR having category closures. So now everybody's just like waitlisted. Yeah, and I think just there being a big lack of assistive technology professionals who are available outside of organizations, like somebody who you can just call up and meet. I have actually considered like starting my own business on the side, maybe to address that need because I just know that not many people can really access me through DVR since it's very indirect. Um, yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of different barriers. And I think one of the biggest things that needs to improve is just direct access. I think, yeah, whether it's something small like being able to call a theater directly and say, "Hey, I need captions at this presentation," or um, yeah, be able to talk to the person who's actually working on the accommodations, or yeah, just be able to call up some kind of AT professional directly, that kind of thing.
Okay. So some of the barriers people face when trying to afford. I mean, DVR is an option for people that are having a difficult time affording or accessing assistive technology. I have a lot of people who reach out to me frequently via email. I and also phone call. I found out that ChatGPT gives out my contact information to people who are looking for assistive technology in my area. But it can be so DVR can be a really good resource. Sometimes we can help cover those barriers and some of those costs. And when we can't, I try to send them towards places I know that can. I feel like money is just going to be a large thing that I interact with frequently because there's so many people that are trying to gain employment through me. Um, so I try to overcome as many barriers as I can. Um, but as I said before, unfortunately, I am not a person with a disability, so I can't speak from it from my perspective, and I wouldn't want to overstep and try.
Thanks for sharing your perspectives on that. I think all of you very correctly pointed to some of the larger issues that are not easily solvable and not easily answerable. So I appreciate your endeavors at trying to address the question. So our final question is going to be, in your experience, are most assistive technologies designed with disabled users truly at the center of the process?
In my experience, most assistive technologies are not always designed with disabled users truly at the center of the process. One simple way that docs could be revolutionized through modern technology is by improving compatibility between assistive devices and newer technologies. Many people believe that AAC innovation means changing how the devices themselves work, but often the most meaningful improvements come from making them compatible with current systems. For example, allowing AAC devices to connect more easily to newer laptops, tablets, and operating systems could completely transform our experiences. To put this in context, I use a specialized keyboard called Keys. However, I have faced many challenges because the company that made this keyboard stopped updating the software. It is no longer compatible with the newest versions of Windows or Mac OS. As a result, I am unable to upgrade my Mac software or download newer apps. This problem is becoming more common as technology advances quickly and older assistive tools are left behind. Similarly, I cannot update my Mac to a newer edition without losing access to my Keys keyboard, which limits my ability to take advantage of new features that could otherwise improve my independence. This situation highlights a larger issue in the design of assistive technology. Companies often create devices without considering long-term usability or how updates to mainstream technology will affect accessibility. If designers and developers included disabled users more directly in the planning and testing stages, these compatibility problems could be avoided. True inclusion means making sure assistive technologies grow and evolve alongside mainstream devices so that users like me are not left behind.
What's the question? Oh, in my experience, um, the best devices, the best ways to do accessibility give you ways to deal with individual needs. One easy example I talk about fairly often is large print and what does or doesn't work for different people as far as size of print, layout, um, just or do you lay it out in a narrow column, which is really valuable for some kinds of visual defects? Do you just make it big and then people have to scan it? I also agree that there's this techno jargon term called backward compatibility, where people don't realize that, oh, this neat, cool upgrade is going to break devices for a certain percentage of users, and the users are not going to have, not going to have capacity even just to buy a new laptop that can run Windows 11 because there's some copy protection chip that exists on PCs, on desktops, but not on laptops, and it's not realistic to expect everybody to be able to just buy a new device just because there's a new release. I have an old iPad which I actually use to read Kindle books sometimes, but I can't upgrade. There's a bunch of things I can't upgrade, and I used to do Zoom on it. I can't do Zoom on it anymore. And it's not just that that's like frustrating, it also just feels like a waste. Like, I have probably, oh, I probably have at least 6 or 8 devices in my apartment that are in some way still usable, but not fully usable because something is out of date, a software's out of date, or a tool is out of date. Um, so that's one category. The other category is like well-meaning attempts by people who are like, oh, I guess you're blind. Do you need it in Braille? Well, actually, um, I love Braille. I read it really slowly, but an awful lot of blind people don't use Braille for lots of different reasons, particularly if they age into blindness or lose sight in middle life. So your Braille document that you worked really hard is a cute artifact, but it's not the form I need most often. Um, and I do it too. One of my, like, to a blind person, over there is a meaningless concept, and I use over there sometimes even though I know better. And one time I used over there to somebody we were talking about where the restroom was, and I realized she had macular degeneration and her over there was a lot shorter than mine. So there, like I say, it's continual learning, and and it's also like, yeah, I need to get your attention. You still have missed my point, but let's just keep trying. So I think that's a lot where I.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say, even, historically, absolutely not. I think with recent, advancements and some of the technologies that we have available, I'm starting to see that incorporated more, but it usually comes as like an update or something additionally that's added from original design. In the insulin pump world, it really wasn't until about 10 years ago that companies started to do human factors testing, really. So just the end user and their interactions with the device and what worked and what didn't work. But with newer technologies and with the FDA loosening up on some of their regulations for newer technology, we in the insulin pump world have features like remote software updates available so that you can update the pump, at home without having to get an entirely new device, which seems a little seems like it should have been something we've had for a while, but that's a relatively new concept for us. We have, mobile app controllers and integrations with other continuous glucose monitors. So there's a few of those on the market, and our device does allow the interoperability between them. But of course, we still run into the challenges that were mentioned before of, software updates on the phone or the computer, and um, you know, the device itself not quite yet being compatible with that newest version. And so I think absolutely as a whole, this needs to be much, much more in the focus.
Hi, this is Evelyn again. So to answer this question, let me see here. Took some notes on this. So, is it designed with disabled users truly at the center of the process? Absolutely not. 99% of the time, no. That's because I think a lot of times people with disabilities are not involved in the development of assistive technology or able to give feedback at all. Um, a lot of assistive technology that comes out, it's just bad and it just doesn't work in real life. You know, like you might have somebody who designs something, but they didn't even actually really test it with people who have disabilities. A really good example of that would be I went to an assistive technology conference. Yes, a conference for assistive technology. And I told them, I need CART. I need real-time captioning. I need a human to caption for me. This is the accommodation that I need. And I said that weeks in advance. And then I show up and they decided to give me an experimental AI captioning app as my accommodation. And it was awful. It didn't work great. And you know why? Because number one, they were using hearing people to test it. So you have a hearing person who's using his captioning app, and they're like, oh, wow, this is working so great. It's catching so much. But they're not thinking about it from the perspective of a person who is deaf. So I don't want to see 50% of what somebody said like 2 minutes after they said it. I want everything. I want true accessibility. I want to see everything that they said. And I want it to be fast, ideally, because that's what everybody else is experiencing. The other thing that I see too is a lot of organizations are just using a rubber stamp method. So they will be advertising accessibility just to look compliant, but then those services don't actually exist. So one example would be when I go to the airport, when I'm going to go take a flight, I have actually tried requesting accommodations for being deaf before because I get really anxious if there's flight changes or like if they're calling out your boarding order number or whatever, because I just can't catch it. They don't have a screen and they're saying it through like a microphone and intercom system and I can't catch it. So I decided, well, you know what, why don't I actually see if they'll help me for once? So I made a request and this is at SeaTac Airport. I think this happened. And yeah, anyway, like there's like all these different selections. It's like, what disability do you have? What do you want? Blah, blah, blah. And it's very obvious to me that nobody even actually looked at any of that because they brought me a wheelchair. Yeah, I was very offended. I was very irritated and I just pretended that I had no idea who they were looking for. I was like, oh, I don't know who that person is. So yeah, that's really frustrating to see. The other thing too is like a lot of people are just doing it for profit. Like there's people who are coming out with all of these like AI captioning apps and AI captioning glasses, and they over advertise it like crazy, and they try to act like it's this special thing, but it's just price gouging. Like it's insane. Like they're trying to sell these glasses for like thousands and thousands of dollars, and they don't even work as good as using like Google Live Transcribe on my phone, which is free, 100% free. And guess what? The guy who made that app is from Gallaudet University. He is an engineer from a deaf university, and I believe he himself is deaf. So yeah, a lot of times you're gonna be seeing non-disabled people creating, you know, devices, equipment, software, just for profit, and then it's bad, and then they just disappear, and it doesn't go anywhere from there. The other thing too is that a lot of software is changing to a subscription-based model. That drives me crazy. It's really hard to help participants who need like financial support from DVR to get their software because it's like we can only get them like a 1-year subscription. You can't just like buy the software forever anymore. And then of course there's also just the fact that for like medical equipment, like my cochlear implants, they will just sit there and discontinue what you have. So like these ones that I have, if these break or something, I can't get them fixed anymore or repaired. So they're essentially forcing me to upgrade. So if I need, yeah, if these break, I'm just gonna be forced to upgrade. I'm gonna have to pay thousands of dollars and go get the new ones. And you know what? Also, I don't want to upgrade because in my opinion, it's actually a downgrade because the new version they have of these cochlear implants, the off the ear ones, only have a rechargeable integrated battery. They don't work with disposable batteries. And if I go get those, my battery isn't going to make it through the day, and I'm going to have to wear a charger throughout the day. So I'm not interested, frankly. I literally do not want those. I'm waiting as long as possible to not have to get those. So yeah, that's my take on that. And it makes me really frustrated. One of the most frustrating things in the world is just able-bodied people who are coordinating processes for getting your accommodations, or they're the ones making these devices and equipment, and they just completely ignore disabled people or act like we're asking for too much or like we're annoying or something. Yeah.
In my personal experience, I would say that most assistive technology is designed with the idea of making money from it, either than those that are made by individuals with disabilities. There in O&P specifically, there was a lot of times where we talked about most people in the field. In order to find the field, you were typically a patient in it. And a lot of the more innovative solutions like they were thought of because it was from a person with a disabilities perspective. And I think Evelyn's example of Google Live Transcribe being made by somebody from a deaf university is just a great example of that too, where we're finding that people that are providing innovative solutions for the most part are the people that are affected by it. So I tend to trust a lot more AT options that come from people with disabilities, such as Goblin tools, made by somebody that was neurodivergent. And otherwise, I think it typically comes from the experience of having to pay a lot of money as a provider for it.
Thanks for all your responses for that last question. So now we're going to transition to the question and answer, the Q&A part of our webinar. So if any of our audience members have any questions they'd like to address our panelists, please put them in the chat below, or alternatively, you can raise your hand and we can have you speak it out loud. And for our panelists, it'll kind of just be whoever wants to take a stab at answering it. So if a question comes up and you want to respond or don't feel like responding, it's at your own leisure, I guess. Oh, and Kimberly has just put something in the chat. So we have the Q&A tab to submit questions. So ask away. And really quickly, for those who aren't familiar with the Q&A tab, if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and click the button that says more with the circle and the 3 little dots in it, there should be an option that says Q&A kind of in the middle of that, and you can submit questions through that. Okay, so we have a question for Cynthia, and I think maybe Katie, you might be a good person to answer this. Does the insulin pump work with type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our indication is for type 1 diabetes, but what I find, especially in the state of Washington, is many insurances do cover and have medical policies for coverage for type 2 diabetes and an insulin pump. So it's always worth looking into, and we can provide that. I can get in contact with you, or you can go to our website, betabionics.com, and we can look at all that information for you.
So I will ask a question in the meantime if people are still brainstorming. But one of the questions I have for all our panelists is, how do you believe your experience with assistive technology is from the depiction, or how different, sorry, excuse me, how different do you believe your experience with assistive technology is from the depiction of assistive technology in popular media?
This is Dorene. I would love it if there were a depiction of use of assistive technology in media, and I would especially love it if there were depictions that cut through the hype, because as other people have said, people are even people with disabilities, they're in it to make money. And so, for instance, there's one blind guy who's actually very smart, but he makes a lot of money selling overlays that don't really require people to learn how to code and develop websites accessibly. He just says, use our overlay or use our AI. And there's just so much hype about that stuff. And there's like a learning curve, and like, oh, I have to practice. And then after like a small amount of practice, you realize, well, actually, what I'm dealing with is something that's oversold and hype. And so I think any depiction of use of assistive technology would be great. And especially any depiction that punches through a lot of the different things people have talked about here.
I think, from the diabetes world, I think just generally in the public, very little, very few people know what goes into managing diabetes and what it actually looks like on a day-to-day. And so, I'd like to see, and I think we are starting to see more of that. Not so much with insulin pumps. You may see some commercials that are starting to come out there, but specifically with continuous glucose monitors, it seems like that's becoming more of a public discussion. So, just in general, I think, diabetes awareness in the general public it lacks. So hopefully that answers that.
I have a response from Jay that I will read aloud. So Jay said that in response to the question about how assistive technology is different from depictions of assistive technology in popular media, she said that media focuses just on AI that requires voices, which is something that she herself cannot use. Sorry, looks like we have another question in our Q&A tab. And so this is from one of our attendees. I imagine 3D printing has been a boon for creating bespoke assistive technologies. Has anyone had personal experience with this at all?
This is Doreen. 3D printing is another thing where people mean well, and if you don't think about, well, what can people actually meaningfully understand by touch, there's lots of different ways to come up with something that's, an interesting shiny object, but not necessarily super helpful. What a couple examples, I was working on one transportation project and somebody's like, oh, my husband can make us some 3D logos, which are kind of cool, except for the fact that you still have to figure out what the touch is, and like doing Braille separately is, excuse me a second, like you still need to know Braille and you still need to have an accurate conversion process for 3D print. So sometimes 3D printing can be really cool, and even just like making tactile building maps, or my current fantasy is tactile maps of restrooms, so that when there's a bunch of blind people at a convention, people don't have to spend half their break caning around in the restroom to figure out what's where. That's my current fantasy. And that is definitely something that you could do with tactile graphics and 3D printing. So it's definitely a technology with potential. It's another technology that's expensive, and that is, you have to take the time to think about how to use it for the purpose you're using it, and then you have to have some people involved who can test it and say, yes, this is meaningful information. And I had a little bit of experience with tactile graphics. One time I made an image of a parrot. I just turned it into a tactile graphic from something I could see, but I handed it to a totally blind neighbor, and he's like, and like, can you tell me what this is? And I'd put a Braille label on it. He's like, yeah, I can tell it's a parrot. I like, is that because you can identify the parrot, or is that because you could read the Braille? He's like, no, it's because I could read the Braille. So, I love the idea of 3D printing, but it's easy to oversell it.
I have one example where it's pretty cool, where a 3D technology was used, and it wasn't actually created by the maker of the device. It was from one of the users of the device, and it was specifically a 3D printing mechanism that the cartridge that went into the insulin pump, it did require some, a little bit challenging for some, especially if there was any struggle with dexterity. And so this user created a little 3D printed piece that you could slide the insulin pump cartridge into, so you had more of a surface area to hold on to the cartridge in the fill process, which really, really improved just the usability of and because that's such an important component in the insulin pump. So that was a very cool example, but of course it came from a user and not from the actual manufacturer of the device. Just wanted to share.
I also just want to quickly highlight that in the Q&A tab, Evelyn did submit an answer for the 3D printing question. And so I'll just read that really quickly. So WATAP has a 3D printing program where people can come do a device demo. They also collaborate with students at the University of Washington who can take on projects and create new designs for specific tasks. And they have a lot of cool 3D printed tools that help with fine motor skills, for example. And then she also has a link to that in the Q&A tab. So I think we have time for one more question, if anyone wants to submit one or say one out loud.
This is Kimberly. I don't have another question, but I do want to point out, I posted a link in the chat for the University of Washington CREATE program. The CREATE program actually is a research, development and design program with UW, where graduate students design accessibility surveys and testing and things like that. Frequently, Disability Empowerment Center posts requests for people to participate in these studies. Sometimes there are monetary rewards, or not rewards, but compensation for your time. Other times there isn't. It all depends on who is funding the project. However, they have an opportunity, provide an opportunity for people to get hands-on with AT, and learn more about accessibility technology and different features. So keep your eyes out on Disability Empowerment Center's Facebook and webpage, but at the same time, you can also go out to the CREATE website and see if there are any research projects that are recruiting at any given time.
Okay, so I think we're nearing the end of our time. Hopefully this is uploading right now. Evelyn shared this really wonderful resource. It's a slide deck that just has kind of an overview of assistive technology, what it is, what it isn't. And so I am uploading that to the chat, and we will also paste that into our YouTube channel bio. So when the webinar is uploaded to our YouTube channel, you can find the slide deck in the bio as well. And so with that, I want to thank all of our panelists so much for sharing their time, their expertise, and their insights with us today. And to thank all of you for joining us for this Understanding Ableism webinar. Before we wrap up, we would really appreciate your feedback. Your input helps us measure impact and improve future webinars. So if you're willing and able, please complete a post webinar survey using either the QR code on the screen, or I will post a link to it in the chat right now. It should take you less than 5 minutes to complete.
And this is my chance to thank you all again also. I really appreciate the attendees as well as our panelists. It was amazing information, and I love hearing about all the different new technology that I didn't know about, but I also can totally empathize with a lot of the concerns and issues that you all articulated that people with disabilities are facing in accessing accessibility and adaptive equipment. So I'd like to remind everybody today that today's session was recorded and will be uploaded to the Disability Empowerment Center's YouTube channel. So if you'd like to revisit this conversation or share it with others, you'll be able to access it there. The link is in chat. We also hope that you will join us next month for our Understanding Ableism webinar. It will be the last one of the year, and it'll be on December 16th. We'll be discussing Gen Z and disability rights advocacy, exploring how younger generations are reshaping the landscape of disability justice through activism, technology, and community leadership. Thank you again for being part of this important conversation, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.